Hi, I'm Katie Mack, and you're listening to How's That, the Cricket Podcast.
How's that? You messed about, I caught you out. How's that?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of How's That, the Cricket Podcast with me, Lily. Now, this week, Ollie is on holiday in Thailand, but yeah, I am here and I'm going to be just taking this episode solo this week. But don't you worry, because we have still got a brilliant guest on the way for you. As you would have heard at the beginning, we are joined by Katie Mack, Adelaide Strikers champion, ACT captain. So it's absolutely brilliant to chat to Katie. But yeah, not much cricket to talk about this week, unfortunately, due to the fact that Ollie isn't here. There has been the Australia West Indies first test and the England-Pakistan test as well. So what I'll do is I'll quickly run over the England-Pakistan test. So obviously when Ollie comes back, we will run through this in a bit more detail, but this is just a bit of a guide to show you where we're at this current point in time when this episode is being released. So the first test between England and Pakistan took place on the 1st to the 5th of December. England in their first innings setting 657, which is incredible. Hundreds from Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett, Ollie Pope and Harry Brook. All made 100s, Harry Brook 153. So a really incredible batting performance from England in this first innings. Pakistan were not too far behind, in all honesty. They were all out for 579, which is a good effort. They've had some hundreds on the board as well. 3 of their players scoring 100s, but just not enough to completely catch up to England there. England then in the second innings, they set 264 and declared on that, and it was an interesting one because everyone was thinking, oh, he's done it too early. But in the second innings, when Pakistan were trying to chase down this score, it was really tricky because they were running out of lighting. So they had about 20 minutes. England needed one more wicket. Pakistan needed about 50 runs, and we weren't sure who was going to do it, whether it was just going to be a draw because of the light. But England ended up taking the final wicket. It was Jack Leach, in fact. LBW went up for a review, and it was all very climactic, and England ended up winning by 74 runs. So a really good result from England there. And then we will quickly just go over Australia, West Indies. So look, we weren't ever really in doubt, to be honest, in this test, where Australia first setting 598, 204 from Marnus Lamachan, 200 from Steve Smith, Travis Head 99. He stepped right back in his crease, chopped on. Super unlucky there. They were just going to declare after he got his 100, and then they all went off after he got out for 99. So yeah, Australia ended up on 598 for 4 declared. West Indies were all out for 283. Here and there scores from all of them, a couple of 50s, a couple of 60s. Other than that, not much. Good bowling from Mitchell Starc with 3, Pat Cummins with 3, Nathan Lyon with 2. And then to go into the Australian second innings, David Warner with 48, Marnus Lamachan with 104 not out, and Steve Smith with 20 not out. So they bumped up the score a bit, made it to 182 for 2 and declared at that because, obviously they had an extremely strong lead there, and then West Indies were all out for 333. In their second innings, Craig Brathwaite made 110 and no other impressive scores really from there. So yeah, like we said, never really in doubt for Australia. Player of the match was Marnus Lamachan with 204 and his 104, even though Nathan Lyon took 6 wickets. He took 6 for 128 of 42 overs. So brilliant piece of bowling from him there. But yeah, that is the 2 test matches that have happened. Other than that, there really hasn't been any other cricket. So yeah, I think we will just jump straight into our interview this week. So like I mentioned at the beginning, this week we spoke to Katie Mack. Absolutely wonderful player. I have so much respect for Katie Mack as a player, as a human. Like I said, as a Strikers fan, it was brilliant to chat to her about the final. Absolutely loved it. So we hope you enjoy it too. Enjoy our interview with Katie Mack.
Mack pulls that one away, and that brings up a fantastic century. She's the pillar of the ACT, and she stars again with a wonderful 100.
Welcome, and thank you very much for joining me today, Katie.
No worries.
Do you mind just telling me, where in the world you are at the moment and what teams you're currently with?
I'm in Canberra in my house, and I'm back training with the ACT Meteors. So we have a game in a couple of weeks, actually against South Australia. So that should be interesting.
Very interesting. And obviously we'll speak about why in a moment. But like we said, it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, hasn't it? But before we go to the most recent achievements, we'll go right back to the very beginning. And do you want to tell me a bit about how you first got into cricket?
So there are a few of us that used to go watch our brothers play. And it's sort of back in the age where, women, or you didn't know women played sport, or, your options were basically netball or softball, or cricket wasn't really an option. But we got pretty sick of having to watch, and we were like, why can't we play? And our parents were pretty supportive. So we started a girls group, and back then you could play 2 years under. So we started the 2 years under our age group in a girls team, and there were about 4 of us that continued, and we ended up playing in our own age group, but with the boys. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
Nice. And so that was New South Wales, was it? Is that where you grew up and where you started playing cricket?
Yeah.
Okay, so growing up and playing within your girls team, playing bits with the boys and all of that, who were your cricket idols growing up?
I don't know if I would say I had any idols. I loved to play, but I didn't particularly watch. And back then as well, like there wasn't any women's cricket on TV, so there was no one like me, really to idolize at that time. I think I just loved to play, and that's what motivated me and kept me going. And then as I got older, being able to watch like Belinda Clark and, even Lisa Sthalekar, Alex Blackwell, all those girls, and then eventually getting to play with a few of them. I guess you could say that was sort of when I sort of got into idolization, but I was a bit older than most.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about obviously not having, female role models to look up to when you were younger. And I think we're in the prime position right now where women's cricket is probably at its peak and one of its best moments. So for you to now be in the position where you're winning titles and you're on the big screen, what does it mean to you to have younger kids looking up to you and going, right, like, I want to be like you when I grow up? Do you see yourself as a role model in any ways?
I think it's pretty special that you can just play a sport and then people think that you're special for doing that, when you're different to anyone else, but you just happen to play a sport that sometimes gets on TV. I think that's a surreal but also really cool way that you can connect with someone or go out of your way to be nice to someone, and they're really grateful for that. And I think that's something that I'm therefore grateful for. But I think, I look back, and if I was these young girls' age and knowing that I could get paid and I had a pathway for cricket, I just feel like that would have been amazing. Like when I was growing up, it was a complete hobby, and it always was going to be a hobby, and I had no inkling that I'd ever make a living out of it. So it's pretty cool to think that now we're on TV and these young girls are being able to see that actually, this is a career path.
Mm-hmm. So talking about that, not really expecting to get to where you are now, what was your pathway in order to progress to where you are now?
So I played a lot of boys cricket. I played rep cricket until I was about 12, 13, and I actually got told that I wasn't allowed to play with the boys any longer when I got to about 13. So that was struggles we still had. We were lucky enough that I played at Bankstown Sports in Sydney, that they had a good grade female competition. So I moved into that. I went into New South Wales Pathways and did all their underage carnivals, and eventually got a breakers contract when I was 16, back when I used to bowl leg spin. And I was there for a couple of years, but it was a really tough team to break into. They had 7 Australian players. They had Lisa Sthalekar, Alex Blackwell, Lise Perry, Healy, everyone. Didn't lose a game. So that's when I decided I would get opportunity and move down to ACT. And I'm at my 10th year at ACT, so I haven't looked back.
Yeah. So how did that opportunity come up? Do you remember what that was all like for you, and what was your mindset like? Right, this is a pretty big setup to move away from New South Wales. So yeah, do you remember what was going through your mind when you got that call up to ACT?
Yeah, so I played club cricket with the ACT captain, Chris Britt, at the time, and she's the first one that sort of asked whether I'd be interested in moving down. I always viewed cricket as I love to play and I wanted to play. I wasn't a big fan of waiting my turn, or trying to break into a team that was impossible at the time. I wanted to play, and I felt like I could play at that level. So it was actually a fairly easy option for me. ACT at the time, and still doesn't really have the funding or facilities that New South Wales does, but still a big believer that that's not always the most important thing. But yeah, so at the time as well, we weren't paid very much at all. So I was keen that I could play in ACT, but actually stay in Sydney and finish uni in Sydney and then move down after that.
And then talk to me a little bit about ACT currently. So it's maybe a bit of a struggle to the season so far this year. So how have you found the first half of the season? How do you hope it's going to go going into the back half of the season?
Yeah, it's been good. The results haven't gone our way, but I think we had a few nervous games to get through. We have a really young squad. They're all quite inexperienced. There's a couple of us that have a lot of experience. We have me, Holly Furling, and Carly Leeson and Zoe Cook in there, and the rest I think average about 2-3 games of WNCL between them. So I think expectations were that it was going to be a year of figuring things out, and I hope that we use the rest of the season to make sure that we get to a point where next year we're coming in really strong. But yeah, it's nice at ACT. We get a lot of young girls come down that want the opportunity, and I think that creates a really good group because everyone knows how hard you have to work for that opportunity, and to be able to come down and get it, everyone's pretty grateful to be here.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because the ACT don't have any Australian representatives. So when those girls are all gone away for Australia duties, all the ones who play in the national team, you've got your whole team still. So do you think that is going to play in your advantage anyway? And if it will play in your advantage, having your full team when other people are missing their key players, if you like?
Yeah, definitely. It's nice that we'll keep our core group together. I think, well, the other squads, if you have an Australian player, you get to contract more, so they don't necessarily lose anyone in terms of their squad list, but it's definitely a big hole in what their first playing 11 would be, and a bit of a shake up for them. And I think that's a benefit to us is we've already played 4 games with the squad that we'll play the rest of the season with. So hopefully that gives us a nice advantage.
Yeah. And you mentioned before about obviously it being a tough start to the season versus, WA and all those teams. So now you're coming up against South Australia, which is maybe going to play to your advantage. You play for the Strikers, you know them, you know the SA team. Do you think that's going to help you in any way, knowing the ins and outs of most of the South Australian team?
Yeah, definitely. I've tended to score runs against SA too, which has been great for me. I think it helps. I know the players, I face them. I don't know if that means I will be successful, but yeah, I think that familiarity is a nice thing as a player.
Yeah, well, look, we'll see. And yeah, hopefully it all goes well for you. So now let's talk a little bit about the 100. So you were involved in the very first season of the 100, played for Birmingham Phoenix. Now, what was that experience like for you? It was a brand new tournament. No one really knew what to expect. You as an Australian probably knew even less. So what was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind. So I only got a call on a Monday asking, I think Elise Perry had pulled out and asking if I'd want to go over, and that they were leaving that Friday. So I was quickly ringing work, ringing cricket, sort of getting permission, had to get an emergency passport. Like it was all a bit of a whirlwind, waiting for, is during like COVID. So waiting for, approval from the government that I could go over, with a little bit of a thought of, will I come back? Like, will I be able to actually make it back to Australia with everything that was happening at the time? But I had the best time. I made the most of it. The travel, the excitement, you see on TV that they have really good crowds. People really get around it in England. So it was an amazing experience to do.
Yeah, and obviously, like you mentioned, the crowds is something that's been a big talking point, and with the double headers. So is there anything that you think that maybe Australian cricket or the WBBL could pick up and maybe learn from the 100 if there were anything there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk around this at the moment. You've got to sort of keep evolving the game and making it new and interesting to keep fans, entertained or interested. With the Big Bash, we get really, really good TV viewing, which is great. But sometimes the timings of TV, best time for people to be at home isn't the best time for them to be at a game. So I think those two things struggle, and it's definitely something they're looking at. I did like the double headers in England. There was only about 40 minutes between games, whereas when we did double headers here in Australia, I think it was about 2 hours. So I think that is something they could incorporate again, but I think the women's game can also stand on its own. I think a little bit investment of making sure we have good times and you know, getting crowds there, making sure people know the games are on. Well, yeah, I think will do really well for us.
Yeah, definitely. And still on the 100 now, a question that I have, like obviously you're sponsored by food companies. Did you get lots of popcorn when you were there or not? Did you get a good supply of Butterkist?
Yeah, this was a question we had from the start, like where is our popcorn? But yeah, about halfway through we got a few containers of it, so yeah, more than enough popcorn by the end of it.
Yeah, nice, nice. So yeah, now let's go to the main talking point. Let's go to the WBBL. Now, you've been involved in the tournament since the beginning. You've been with the Stars until you moved to the Strikers. So what's it been like to see the progression of the tournament over years of being in and around it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the standard. When I first joined, to be fair, we hadn't played much T20 cricket, so I think that's a big factor. But you know, when I first joined, you know, 100 runs was defendable. You know, scoring at an 80-90 strike rate was really good. And you know, the next year it was, you know, 110, 120 was a winning score. The year after was 130. And now we see sort of you're only really comfortable if you're scoring 170 plus. Anything sort of chaseable this year. So the standards definitely improved, and I think it's an element of girls becoming more professional, but also getting more game time. But the other thing I reckon is sort of touched on it before is we're getting a lot of girls coming to the cricket that actually play cricket and are in women's leagues. When we first started, it was all backyard cricket, or like I'm coming, but my brother plays. So I think that's a big difference as well.
Yeah, and so obviously you mentioned you were with the Stars and then you moved across to the Strikers. Now, what was that move like for you, and why did you feel like it was right to join the Adelaide team?
Yeah, so it's actually like I think a really cool part of my career. It wasn't the best part, but I had a couple of really good years with the Stars, and then my last year, my contract had an absolute flop. And got dropped, and you know, it was pretty horrendous. So wasn't the greatest time, but after that year, Stars actually didn't want me back, so I would have stayed at the Stars. I did love my time there, but they didn't want me back, so I sort of had to look out to where else I would be able to go. And I was going through the teams, and going through who would I want to play for, and Strikers was the top of that list. You could see from the outside that they were a close knit group. Just the way the way they went about things, the way they played, just seemed, you know, it seemed familiar, it seemed cohesive, and yeah, I said that's somewhere I want to play. And the first year I joined, they were like, we only have a minimum contract available, and I was like, I'll take it, and you know, work my way up hopefully, and that's kind of what happened. So pretty lucky.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And like you said, you joined us in the first season in 05, and obviously me being a Strikers fan, it's been a bit of a tough couple of years, hasn't it? We made the final that year against the Heat. We travelled over Alan Borderfield. Disappointing game there. Lost. Yeah, it wasn't a too great game for the Strikers. So do you remember much about that game? And then if so, you know, we didn't make finals in 06, but then how did that kind of fuel the want to make it into the 07 final as well?
Yeah, so well, I was actually just excited to be there. At the Stars, we'd never made a final series, so I'd never had that excitement of making the top four and getting crowds and getting to that last sort of end of the season. So I was just excited to be there, and even when we lost, I was like, "This is still really cool." Obviously disappointing. I think the next year not making it was a bit more, and we came back with a bit of a vengeance last year and this year. But I was reflecting on the last 4 years, and everyone sort of goes, "Oh, it's disappointing," or "You've missed out." And I'm like, actually, if you look at it, we've been a really successful team. To make the grand final 3 years out of 4 is pretty huge. If you think that the result in one game would have been the difference from us winning 3 years out of 4, is a pretty good sign of success, I'd say.
Yeah, and talking about that, well, like we said, 06, so didn't make the finals, but then 07 we did. That was a pretty incredible, although we didn't win the last game, it was a pretty incredible build up to that final. It was the eliminator and the challenger taking on two of the top teams that have been the best teams all season round, and to beat them pretty well. What were those matches like, and what confidence, I guess, did that give you going into that grand final against the Scorchers?
Yeah, they were great. I actually think it's the difference to this year is last year. I think we went into the final with so much confidence. I know myself, I'd been scoring runs, and I just, in my head, I was like, I'm going to win. We're going to win this game. I'm going to help us win it. Like, it's just going to happen. We were all like, we were all thinking how good, like when we win this, we're going to do it. we've been playing so well, and when we didn't, it was so devastating. It was just like this big fall from grace almost. Whereas this year, I felt like we had some really dominant performances in our bowling and some with our bat, but we never seemed to really tie the two together, or our fielding would be bad and we'd drop a few catches. We never had a game where I think we 100% nailed everything or played as well as we believed we could, like we did last year. So going into the final, I think it was a different thing. It was a different thing of not we're going to like convincingly going to win this. We were sort of like, we're just going to go out and play cricket, and what happens happens. And it's all up to the Sixers to win or lose it, really.
Yeah, and talking about your really good run last season, you were second leading run scorer throughout the tournament, and you were the MVP for the Strikers. Now, how frustrating was it for you to have such a good season, if it was frustrating, to have such a good season, you're doing so well, and then to kind of fall at the last hurdle and not win that final? What was that like for you personally?
Yeah, it's actually a nice contrast to this year because I didn't score as many runs this year. I'm still satisfied with my season, but yeah, obviously not as many runs as last year. But I feel like the difference was I made a good contribution in the final. I was really happy that I got us off to a good start, because in finals, it's important that you get out there and you bat actively and confidently, and that passes on to everyone. And I'm a big believer that I helped us do that. And it was a lot more satisfying being able to contribute in a final that actually got us the trophy, and everything else from the season almost becomes irrelevant compared to last year. Scoring stacks around, yes, it was great, but not being able to do it in a final hurt pretty bad.
Yeah, and talking about this year's final, now the way you were dismissed was pretty unlucky, and I know a lot of us were quite gutted with that. What was going through your mind? Because everyone was like, wait, she out, like, was she bowling? What happened? So what was going through your mindset when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done that. I haven't stepped on my wicket since I was under 10s playing on synthetics. So yeah, not something you're quite aware of. But I think if you watch the ball prior to that, it bounced so much, and there was quite a bit of bounce for the spinners in that net on that wicket. But yeah, Eccleston bounced one up, it hit my upper arm, and I was quite conscious of the fact it was a small boundary on that offside, and deep point was square. And so normally I would think about I'd just go with the bounce and hit over the top. But I was a bit aware that if I did that, Burnsy might be able to get around and catch it. So I was working really hard to get over the top of the ball. So I sat a little bit deeper in my crease, and I was like, going to step right back. And I actually got it all right, and then went to take off and stepped on my stump. So yeah, maybe take a different approach next time.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter because we got there anyway, so it's okay. It's just like us sitting there, we're like, oh goodness, oh no, now? It's when little things in finals happen, you're like, oh, don't like it, don't like the little things.
Yeah, I did think as well, like we were going along quite nicely, and I think they were getting their head down, and the fact I stood on my wicket, I was like, oh, like the luck's on their side. Like they haven't got this wicket, like I've given it to them. So luckily it wasn't on their side.
yeah, exactly. And like you said, because you were building up a really nice partnership with Laura as well, so we're like, okay, this is good, like we're going at a good rate. And then but it's fine, doesn't matter now. But talking about the partnership,
it's fine.
Talking about the partnerships you've built, obviously Deandra Dottin's come into the team this year, Laura Wolfart's returned, but what's it been like to open the batting with Deandra Dottin, and then later in the season to open the batting with Laura Wolfart?
Yeah, both amazing. Anytime I get to bat with an international is pretty cool. Deandra Dottin, like, also pretty different players. So Deandra Dottin has a couple of gears where we saw in Mackay, she comes in and absolutely whacks them from ball one, and then she can also have the skill to build an innings, which she did sort of towards the back end of the games. Me and D-Dot had a bit of a love-hate relationship. I don't know if she likes me, but I'm sure she does. But it'd be interesting. Someone would come off and be like, I'd come off and be like, oh, what did you guys talk about? And I was like, I don't know what she was saying to me. And I mean, Laura's familiar. I think we get up and down really well. I think we complement each other. And I think we're probably, a little bit more similar than me and D-Dot.
hmm And do you know like what the plan was between changing them? Because obviously I know Deandra was to come in and to smack it. That was like, you know, her big thing was to hit big. Now, do you know the plans behind that? Was it to build a partnership to start with and then she can come in later down the order and hit it? Is that what it was? Or is there something else there?
Yeah, I think D Dot was finding a lot of success spending a bit more time out there and building an innings. And sort of being able to let her do that by pushing her down the order when there were 4 out just meant that she could get up and down with a few of the drop and run she did, rather than in the power play when the whole field is up, their dots, pressure builds, and then, you know, you do something. So sort of take a little bit of pressure, let her build her innings and go hard through that power surge and sort of later in the innings.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then still, I guess, talking about that final, playing in front of a Sydney Sixers home crowd. Now, what did this do to your mindset? 'Cause it would have been probably a bit like, oh, you know, they're not going for us. But then obviously there were a few people in the crowd who were going for strikers. Then. So did it help knowing that there were some people who were at least on your side within the crowd there at Sydney?
Yeah, definitely. We had a nice little section that was going for the strikers. So it was nice when we got a wicket or did something nice, you'd hear a cheer. But I think I block a lot of it out when I'm out there. I'm pretty focused. And so cheering just becomes cheering. It doesn't really become one sided. So it's kind of nice. In my head, it's just like, you know, they're going for me.
Yeah. Uh, they were getting very annoyed with us, let me tell you. The Sixers fans, they were not having it. I think some people may have moved away from the fans.
Nice, nice.
Oops,
We
but
haven't cheered loud enough if people aren't moving away from
yeah, exactly. Now, the initial score set, now this was quite a questionable score. A lot of people didn't think the strikers were going to be able to defend it. So 147, did you think that was defendable for you initially?
I thought it was under par, but I thought it was defendable. I think we needed to get off to a good start. We needed dots early. I think if they had come out and gone hard and got a few fours away in the power play, we would have probably thought the game was done. But the fact they didn't, I very much felt, you know, like we were in it. And the run rate goes up quite quickly. You have an over or 2 where they score 3, then the run rate's all of a sudden up to 7.5 and then up to 8. So yeah, it only takes a couple overs of being on top for you to feel like, okay, well, it's at 8 runs per over, which is a 160 score. So
And yeah, like at what point did you know that you had won? Was there a point where you knew you had won? Was it when the Sixers were 4 for 16, or was it right up until the very end?
I think I felt like we were going to win when we got Aaron Burns up. I think I knew, I didn't believe we'd won, or I didn't accept it until we had the last ball and it needed more than 6 off it. Because I know Maitland came in and started whacking him, and I was very conscious of the fact she could have taken that game away, and Eccleston can do the same. You know, a couple snicks for 4 does exactly the same thing too. But yeah, I was quietly confident after we got Burnsy out. But yeah, convinced on the last ball.
Yeah, it must have been a bit of a tricky thing because, like we said, we did have them at 4 for 16, but they can bat right down their order, like all the way down. Like you said, Eccleston coming in so low, and she was smacking sixes out of the park the other night. So, what was it kind of like for you as a team? Like, could you not get too ahead of yourself in a way of like, you know, oh, they're 7 down, but they've still got some good batters coming in. So, what was that like for you to kind of have to try and contain it in a way?
Yeah, definitely. We were always conscious of the fact that they had batters to come. And on a ground like North Sydney, it's quick, it's small. I think everyone in any order could score runs on that ground. So, yeah, very conscious to not get ahead of ourselves. We were from, you know, the 10 over mark, we were trying to get as many overs as we could without a boundary, all those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, I believe we would still play the same whether we had them 9 down in the 10th too, if we had them 1 down.
Yeah. So now, can you talk us through what was going through your mind through that last over? You know, I think it was Wello bowling, and there was a few that were put down. There was a few boundaries that were hit. So what was just running through your mind, if you can remember? And then when you won, what were you thinking? What happened?
With Wello's over, I think she's an absolute professional. I had every confidence that she would bowl well. I liked the idea we bowled her. It took away a bit of the edging that could go for 4, or, you know, buys that could go for 4. I mean, on North Sydney, they probably would anyway, but it just helped with that. We didn't have to worry about that as much. We sort of had to worry in front of the wicket. I was at square leg and then coming into sort of actually short square leg. So I was pretty confident the ball wouldn't actually come to me, which was nice, but very conscious of where I was standing and making sure I was concentrating as hard as I could. I was just telling myself, if the ball comes, watch that ball until it is your hand, smother it, don't let it go past you. So those are the things I say in my head. And then I remember just before the last ball, Darcy was next to me and I was like, I think we're gonna win. I mean, they needed 11 off 1 and I was like, I think we're gonna win.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then to win, like, how incredible. The Strikers, obviously, I'd say underdogs going into it, because the Sixers have won before. You know, they've been there, done that. Strikers haven't won yet. We've made 3 finals. We needed it. So what was that like to just go up, hold the trophy, and, you know, to have people there cheering you on, supporting you in the crowd? Like, what was it like just to win and just to hold up the trophy finally?
Yeah, it was amazing. So 8 years in the making. And I actually loved that it took us that long, because then I got to be here for the first win, and 100% I reckon we would have valued that win and that trophy more than the Sixers, because like you mentioned, they've won before. I don't think there's any feeling like wanting something and not getting it for 8 years and then finally getting it.
Yeah, and so deserved as well. And to see off some pretty big parts of the Strikers group, you know, Tegan's retired after this season, and Jude is heading over to Taz as well. So what were the emotions like celebrating them and them getting their final win with the Strikers?
Yeah, I think Tegan, not many people knew before the game that she was going to retire, not from Strikers, but outside of that. And I had Holly Felling messaging me. She was doing some comm stuff and asking me, you know, some themes and anything I could share. And I was like, oh, she's going to hate me for this, but it's Tegan's last game. Like, you know, and she said, you know, Channel 7 they didn't know about it. So I think it was kind of nice, although she probably didn't like it, that they actually got to celebrate her career over comms and mention her and get an interview with her. And you can't really see it. You can kind of see at the end when we celebrate, we all come together, how crazy she goes. She's sort of in the middle. And if you rewatch it, you can just see little bits, but I've never seen her so like I guess ecstatic. She was screaming. She was very, very excited. So I think is a really nice way to send her off. Unfortunately, they lost the WNCL final last year, which was her last game for Scorps, and I think that was pretty devastating for her. So to be able to come back and do that was just great. And same, I sort of talked to her. I was like, "Oh, do you feel like, you know, winning is making you more sad to leave?" And she was like, "No, it feels like I've completed it. It's the end of a chapter. I've done what needs to happen. We've won, and now I'm going to move on." So I think that was nice for her to get a bit of satisfaction in that, or a bit of closure even in her like time with the Strikers.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Like you said, brilliant way to send her off. Now, going back to the game, do you have a favorite moment just from the entire night?
Yeah, my parents are in Sydney, so they got to come to the game, which was nice. And after the game, my dad was just so happy. I've never seen him that happy. So he was, yeah, over the moon. And I guess for them to be able to share in that success and be proud or be part of it was a really cool experience. Brought them down to the shed, so they were there for the team song and celebrations and a few drinks after. And you know, then when we went out to the pitch, they got to come out there. And I think, yeah, just being able to give that to your parents, who have obviously, especially if you play a sport, you know, sacrifice a lot, or, you know, back you and watch you all the time and support you. And for them to be able to get satisfaction out of that is almost as good as getting it for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. Love that. And talking about onto next season now, have you signed on for longer than just last season, like the one just gone?
Yeah. After last year, I signed 2 years, so
okay.
There's a nice feeling. I was sort of saying it's so nice to know that, like, I'll be back. I don't have to worry about contracting or negotiations, and I can plan and being able to come back after a winning year would be really cool.
Well, that's it. And you're going to have the little logo on the shirt with the little champions trophy.
Do we?
Yeah, if you
Oh,
win, you get a little patch on your shirts that have the little
I
trophy.
didn't, I didn't know that.
You
Oh,
didn't know
that's
that? No.
cool. I wonder
Yeah.
if you win 2 years in a row if you get 2 of them.
Maybe. Like, because the Scorchers had it this year on their shirt because they won.
Ah,
So you'll get that.
yeah.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but for you personally, you mentioned before about how you don't feel like your stats and your scores showed well for the Stars, which is why they didn't hold on to you for a contract. But to know that strikers will want to keep you because you've obviously done so well for the strikers, what's that like for you, knowing that you're really wanted and you play a key role within this strikers team for them to sign you on?
Yeah, it's always been a big thing for me. I mean, money is there, but like I mentioned before, ever since I started playing, like I just want to play. I want opportunity and I want to have a role. And being able to find that at strikers and the fact that they back me in that spot, I don't feel like, if I don't perform in one game that they're going to drop me. There's a total belief that I'll do well. And, being able to, back that up with last season and then, also contribute this season was really nice. And yeah, I value that so much. And it's always been a big thing, even when it's come to contracting, is I want to feel valued. I want to feel like I'm going to be a part of the team, because ultimately that's what brings you satisfaction, success, all those other things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, obviously me being Strikers fan since day one, it's been brilliant to have you on our side. I'm glad you're not, playing against the team that I go for, because that wouldn't be great. But then I guess moving on, going into the future, whether it be short term or long term, do you have any goals that you're hoping to achieve?
I always just want to be better or different to the year before. So that's not always based on run scoring. I guess it's based on, did I learn something different or did I improve something? And I think that's what keeps me going year from year. And I've, taken on a captaining role at ACT. So I'm really enjoying that sort of leadership side and developing that and kind of hoping that one day I'll be able to incorporate that into a career post cricket and obviously hopefully try and keep cricket in the mix as well. But yeah, nothing major, just to keep getting better. And I reckon when I decide that I don't want to keep getting better, that's probably when it's time to retire.
Yeah, that's fair. And like we mentioned, captaining ACT, it's a pretty big role. And I feel like from obviously an outside perspective here, from where I am, ACT's, it's a bit different, isn't it? Because it's a lot smaller. It seems like you said you've got quite a younger group of girls. So what's it like to really be at, I guess, the top of the ACT group, being captain? What's that like to overlook all the players and everything? And where do you see ACT cricket progressing into the future?
Yeah, it's always been hard at ACT. Not having a big bash team here is really hard in terms of trying to get girls to come play. You obviously don't have the double contract to offer. But that's where I was saying before, we do get a good group of girls that are looking for opportunity and a chance to play. And I think that's a really big value in being a good cricketer, is being able to take those options just to play. And I've loved captaining. It's been a challenge at some times, and it's been way too many meetings for my liking. And I'm definitely getting better at, saying no to some things. But I enjoy the fact that I can be someone that the girls not so much look up to, but can come to if they need help, and that I can pass on, my experiences to younger girls, and hopefully, they don't have to go through the poor seasons like I did or the mistakes I did because I've told them not to.
And you mentioned there about them not having a big bash team. So a lot of the girls who play for ACT are split amongst all the other big bash teams. So coming up against them, what's it like to play against them in big bash?
Yeah, it's a unique experience because most other teams stay pretty much together, and I kind of like it that we have almost a girl in each team. I think it's a little bit unfortunate in terms of you don't have an option to stay at home. I mean, I find it exciting, but I'm sure there's one day where I'll probably wish that I could just stay at home. And then it's a little bit sad for some of the girls that miss out. I think that that's where it's hard. I think a lot of them would deserve a spot in a squad, but not being from that state is hard to be seen and hard to be valued by that state. So also going to be a big advocate for those girls to get gigs in the future, and hopefully, change people's mindset a little bit. Sometimes the states, pick girls for a bit of development, and some of our girls miss out, which is, unfortunate.
Yeah, well, like you said, hopefully that can be looked at a bit more closely in the future, and something can be kind of worked out there. But talking about playing the girls in the Big Bash, have you had a chat to Angie yet? Have you spoken to her?
Yeah, Angie's very, very laid back. She's pretty go with the flow, and I think she's still young enough that she's well aware that there'll be another premiership for her on the table. But yeah, I feel a bit sorry for her because we've come back and I've got a lot of congratulations and well wishes, and she's sort of sitting there not getting many. But yeah, she's great kid, and she'll be fine. She's happy either way.
Yeah, and like we said, look, if she sticks with the Sixers, their time's going to come again for sure.
Exactly.
She'll be there. I mean, hopefully not next year. Hopefully we can go back to that. And like we said, hopefully the men's strikers can get it done for us. I think the women's strikers have left a good taste in everyone's mouth, going, right, this is time for the men to win it now, because the Scorchers went back to back with the men and the women last year. So hopefully it's the men's strikers this year. I reckon you guys have set a good standard for them.
Yeah, I think we've set high expectations. So hopefully they live up to our expectations. The expectations of Adelaide is to win.
Yeah. From now on it is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, to finish off, I've got just a couple of quick fire questions. Now, some of these are random, some of these are cricket related. So the first one is, if you were stuck on an island, hypothetically, you could take one person with you and 2 items. Who are you taking and what are you taking?
I'm gonna take my boyfriend. He'll provide entertainment, and I will also take a fishing rod for him because he loves fishing, and then that also supplies me food, and I love eating.
Yeah.
The second one, it's a great question. I can light a fire. I can make something sharp. I don't need a knife. Mm-hmm. Maybe a boat.
Okay, nice. Get your way out of that island. Get away. Yeah. Nice. Do you have a favorite shapes flavor?
Barbecue.
Nice. No, that's a good answer. Beach or backyard cricket?
Beach.
Okay, good. Pineapple on a pizza? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Good. Orange juice or apple juice?
Orange juice.
Yeah, good.
That's a close one though. Orange juice.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite cuisine?
No, I don't. I eat everything. Anything, depends on the day to what I want.
Yeah, nice. No, fair. Now, if you're on a game show and you were to win $1 million, whatever the big jackpot is, but you had to phone a friend, could be a family member, could be a friend, whoever you want. Who are you calling and why?
Is this to answer the question?
Yeah.
Like to answer a question?
To get you $1 million jackpot, who are you calling? Who are you trusting to give you that answer?
Oh, probably my mum or my brother, or I've got 3 options, or my partner's dad. They're all people that I feel like know a lot of stuff about stuff.
Just general knowledge kind of things.
Yeah. And very bright human beings. So, hopefully they'd be able to help.
And it's good to have options because that means at least hopefully one of 3 would pick up. But obviously that's
I thought you were going to ask if you had to call someone, they had to pick up the first go.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do not know.
Yeah.
Definitely not myself. Would not ring me, never pick up. But yeah, gosh, maybe my mum.
Yeah, no, good answer. Now, WBBL or WNCL?
WBBL.
Good. Well, I mean, it can't go wrong. Maybe if the Sixers won, it wouldn't quite have been the case.
Yeah, maybe I would have said WNCL. Whichever team is winning.
Yeah. Now, red ball or white ball cricket?
Oh, well, I'm going to say white ball because that's what we play. I would love to play some red ball. So if we actually played red ball, I reckon I would say red ball.
Yeah, good answer. Now, this one is a kind of a how's that legendary question. We've asked this throughout the entire year. Is porridge a cereal, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a general answer, actually. I think you'd be surprised, but
I'm just it's like a wheat, oat, they're all made of the same things. You add milk, you have it for breakfast.
Okay.
Categorizing, it sounds pretty similar.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get that. It's actually very interesting to hear everyone's different explanations as to why, but no, I understand. Completely fair. But yeah, no, that's all the questions I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really, really appreciated.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking me to be on. It's been fun.
Mack pulls that one away, and that brings up a fantastic century. She's the pillar of the ACT, and she stars again with a wonderful 100.
So that was Katie Mack, Strikers ACT star and Strikers champion. For me, it was just brilliant to really get an insight of a final. It's not often you get to chat to a champion pretty soon after they've just won, but we left it long enough so she could kind of gather all her thoughts, and it wasn't like a day or two after the game we were going to chat to her. We left it for a bit, let things sink in, let her get back to her routine and into life, and then we had a chat to her. So I think we had the right amount of time in between, and it was so enjoyable to just hear all about the final and about her cricket and what she hoped to achieve this season and how she did so. So that was really brilliant. So I hope you enjoy listening to that. Now, if you're a Strikers fan and you're listening to this, you are in luck because we have not given up yet with getting Strikers on board the podcast. Literally within a couple of days, we will have another episode out for you. You will hear us chat to Tegan McFarlane, who has been the wicketkeeper since day dot for the Strikers, and she's recently just retired. So we'll chat to Tegan as well about the final and about her journey with the Strikers. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That will be out within the next couple of days. And then next week, we will be back with Harry Conway, who is a Adelaide Strikers fast bowler, South Australia fast bowler, just in time for the men's Big Bash to start. So make sure you tune in for those 2 episodes. We've got a bunch of things coming your way. It's going to be super exciting. Stay tuned. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok at howsthattcp, or you can send us an email at howsthatthecricketpodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us a rating on Spotify. We'd appreciate that as well. But that is all from me this week, and I really hope you enjoyed listening.
How's that?